everybody. This is a start of a new video session, video series, more so than session actually. It's going to be my look at my favorite video game franchise overall, and that is Final Fantasy. We're going to start, of course, at the beginning, which is always the best way. I plan to go through all of the so far released at time of recording 15 mainline titles, as well as some of the side games that I have played. I've played a good chunk of them. For those who may not know, I am actually a huge Final Fantasy fan. I'll be admit, we'll get into my thoughts on the newer games, but definitely the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, PS1 era is my jam for the franchise, and we'll be getting into them as we go. But for now, we want to talk about Final Fantasy One, the one that started it all. Released in Japan in December 18th of 1987, released by Square, now back then only known as Square. Wouldn't be released in America until 1990 with a full, Nintendo. So they went all out. I mean, they tried to, give it all fancier new artwork, which, compared to the Yoshitaka Amano's beautiful illustrations where everybody's blonde because he likes that. They admittedly, like I said, the cover definitely not. It's artistic, but it's very Western, and they tried to really kind of give it a Western feel with this great Boris Vallejo style advertisement that you're seeing right here. But let's go ahead and just get into the meat of Final Fantasy One. It is a standard. You call it standard now, but it is. It's set the standards. It set a lot of tropes for what's going on. You pick a party of four, and you can customize them into any way you want. There are six starting classes. You have the fighter, the thief, the black belt, black mage, white mage, and the red mage. Each with their own unique abilities, and like basically any way you want to build your team, you can build your team. And these are all blank slates. Name them what you want with the limited characters. That later iterations kind of fixed as far as namespace. But back on the old Famicom and Nintendo, it was pretty limited. Now it had the start of like the Final Fantasy's signature side view turn-based battle system, where you just take your time fighting up to at least 9 enemies on the screen, as you can see here on this. Now there have been re-releases through the years that cleaned up the look. You can see as dropped a lot of the bars and made the open screen. A lot newer Final Fantasies look more like this. And admittedly, I've actually played more of the remakes than I have the original Nintendo one. The Game Boy, especially version, is the one I've played probably the most because there was, on the old NES version, there's bugs and a lot of stuff doesn't work. So the newer version will give you a more full experience. But if you truly want to challenge, either find if you have the Nintendo, you have a way to play the old one. The NES Classic actually features it in all of its original glory. But yeah, um, yeah. Here's the one and two for Game Boy Advance. Is definitely the one I played probably the most. But it's a great game. For its time, for its age, Final Fantasy One set a standard, and without it, we wouldn't have the ones that like. I mean, that led into my personal favorite game of all time, let alone my favorite Final Fantasy of all time. But Final Fantasy One is it's a standard story of getting the crystals, saving the world. There's there's all kind of wackiness from just medieval fantasy to robots to time travel, all kind of crazy shit. But I think it's really held up because of the implement of the class system. In a sense, you get to customize your party so you could play it in all kind of various ways. And well, I mean, you could make it the standard. I think a lot of people go for is fighter, black mage, white mage, and either like switching out maybe the thief or the black belt depending on what you kind of want to do. My go-to party if I don't really want an extra challenge is fighter, black belt, black mage, white mage. So you got the heals, the attacks, and two good DPS, one a monster DPS that doesn't require any gear in the black belt, as well as the fighter being your tank basically. And of course, in the game later on, you with an optional side quest. It's told you don't have to do it, but it increases your party by doing the Bahamut side quest, where you can actually change your classes from like a fighter goes into warrior, black belt goes into the master. You get white mage and the white wizard and so on. You get them all. This you get to go boost it. Thief is probably the biggest one. It goes from a thief to a ninja, and that's pretty freaking cool to be honest. If you can deal with the thief early on in the game, it's worth it by the time you get to that. But like I said, Final Fantasy set a lot of standards. We got everything in this early game from just the turn-based combat that the not active time battle because that came later, but you do get a lot of so the start is here, and you see they maintained a lot of it through a good chunk of Final Fantasy's game series. Maintained a lot of the status quo in this game, or from this game. So I mean, that's going to do it. These aren't going to be too deep, too long, because like depending on each game. Final Fantasy One, I mean, it's kind of bare bones compared to his later games. Of course, it's what to be expected from an NES, but it's still a classic. And that opening theme, is just amazing. And yeah, I love this franchise overall, the good and the bad, and we'll be getting to the bad, I assure you, in the later ones. But that's going to do it for now. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this and want to hear more thoughts or deeper thoughts, hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you think if you enjoyed Final Fantasy One, and of course, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Yeah, we'll catch y'all next week for Final Fantasy Two.